Hello, BookTube. I have a whole bunch of read-along updates for you. Vital read-along information. Isn't that so much fun? As you know, I've been doing read-alongs on this channel every Sunday, and next Sunday, this coming Sunday, we will be finishing out the month of May with a read-along of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. A much quoted and often misunderstood book that we will be reading with fresh eyes. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's the last weekend in May. I have a whole bunch of props here so that you wouldn't have to concentrate solely on my 1782 smallpox scars. Then comes June. And the question for the read-along for June was, do we use my own read-along? Every June, I read Homer's Iliad. Where have I got it? I've got it here. So here we go. I've got no good talking about the props if I don't use them. Every June, I read the Iliad. And once before on this channel, I did a read-along, just because I was going to be reading it anyway. That is still true. I am still going to read the Iliad in June. And that naturally thought, since I harp all the time on the fact that you shouldn't just read these great works, you should reread them until you possess them, until they're part of your inner vocabulary and you can keep questioning them and learning from them your whole life. So you don't just read it once and then say, oh yeah, well, I'm not going to read the Iliad because I read that back in 2010. You don't do that. So naturally I proposed the idea that we would do a read-along of Homer's Iliad in June. It's right around the corner. I'm going to be reading it anyway. Got a lot of response, a lot of emails. I'm so glad that a lot of you seem to know my email address. It's st.donahue@gmail. Email me anytime you want about anything in the world. I get tons of emails now from you people, and I love it. But also, I've been looking at the comments field, and that also seems to be a strong proponent of people wanting to read the Iliad in June. The other choice for June was to just return to a normal read-along, not my annual read-along of the Iliad, but just some other book. And the strong leader in that field was the next Palliser novel, the fifth Palliser novel of Anthony Trollope, the fifth, and as Olive would put it, the penultimate Palliser novel, and that is The Prime Minister. And this was a natural candidate for the alternate read-along for June if we don't pick the Iliad, but a consensus seems to have formed that we will do both. So we will do both, and I'm going to do this anyway. It'll be a whole bunch of fun, and however many of you want to join along for either one, you're free to. So that's what we're going to do in June. We will do the first quarter of the Iliad, which is 6 books? Yeah, 6 books. We would do the first 6 books of the Iliad. And then for the Prime Minister, I mean, we'll talk about this on Sunday. We'll talk about this before we launch off. But just in case you want advanced planning, the Prime Minister, very conveniently, is not only divided into 80 chapters, but it's divided into 4 volumes of 20 chapters each. So what we will do when we read the Prime Minister is read a volume, Victorian style, of the original arrangement each week. So 20 chapters a week, but 20 chapters a week is also each volume. So there won't be any of the lurching, oh my God, we're caught in between stools here feeling, because Trollope was winding up each of those volumes as he was writing it. So you'll notice, in other words, that it's a very smooth reading experience. You'll also notice that it's fantastic. This is not just the penultimate Palliser novel, but in my opinion, the greatest of them, and certainly in the opinion of Trollope's readers, many of whom didn't quite know what to make of what they were reading. So one thing that I want to stress about this book, I'll stress it again on Sunday, is that even though this is the 5th book in a series, and even though we just finished Phineas Redux, and Phineas Redux is an explicit sequel, it didn't come out right away, but it is an explicit following on novel to Phineas Finn. I want to stress about this book that despite those two things, you can jump right on here. This has been the first Trollope novel for so many people that I know. And also, fun fact, it was my first Trollope novel. So you can easily jump in here without knowing any of these characters. You're going to love it. You're absolutely going to love it. So those will be our 2, God help us, our 2 read-alongs for June. Homer's Iliad and Anthony Trollope's The Prime Minister. So I'm gonna have to work really hard in the month of June to keep those videos to a manageable length. because I have read both these books many, many times, and I love them dearly. But the last bit of read-along news involves July. We know what we're doing for June, but another question has come up about read-alongs, and that is reading along, picking a book that is not in the public domain. If you, despite the fact that I'm holding up individual editions of both these books, if you want to read Homer's Iliad or especially The Prime Minister, you can get a free download from dozens of sites. And I have sort of kept that as a rule with my read-alongs because I don't want to inconvenience you or put you out of pocket or put you in any inconvenience. But that rules out all the books that aren't free, all the books that are still copyrighted. And quite a few of those make very tempting read-alongs, very tempting. I've mentioned that a couple of times now as a worry, and I've had it pointed out to me many times in the aforementioned email, that it's not all that much of a burden, especially if you have advance warning. These things are $1 or $2 online. You can get a cheap copy of almost anything that's had a respectable print run. It's not going to break the bank if you do it occasionally. And that's all the prodding that I needed. So in July, we are going to read Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. And I haven't done the math yet, but I'm betting that it'll be around 300 pages a week. Let's see if we can do this really quick. No chapter listing. Okay, it's about 800 pages, so maybe 200 pages a week will work for Lonesome Dove. But we have a long time. We can talk about this the closer we get to it. This is July, and so you have that long. This volume, for instance, I got just recently off Book Depository. I don't remember it being that expensive, and it didn't take all that long to get here. Certainly, 2 months a month and a week is time enough for you to get it if that's the route you want to go. But if you go on Amazon, you can find this for a penny. You can find incredibly cheap copies, and Lonesome Dove has had a million print runs. So I don't feel quite so bad about this. All you need is time, and it doesn't have to be, remember, something that you buy. Your library will also have Lonesome Dove or be able to get Lonesome Dove in its interlibrary loan. The Reach, it was a very popular novel, so it'll be possible to do. So if there are no massive objections, I want to try this. I want to try a book that's still copyrighted and see how it goes. And I would love the chance to read this with the rest of you. So that's what we're going to do for Raucous Read-Along News. We're starting with The Prince by Machiavelli. That's next Sunday. Then in June, there'll be 2 read-alongs. They are not mandatory. Keep in mind, there is a mandatory read-along coming in the winter, but I'm using those very sparingly. We had one that was universally mandatory. Even the beauty channels had to do it for Pride and Prejudice. And there's another one of those coming in the winter. But between now and then, you can just dip in or dip out as you feel like it. I'm going to natter on about these things anyway. So for June, there'll be 2. We'll be reading our way through the Iliad, and we'll be reading our way through The Prime Minister by Anthony Trollope. And then in July, we will do Lonesome Dove. And then, to look even further ahead, August is when I reread the Odyssey. So probably in August, the Odyssey will be one of my 2 read-alongs. And then I'm betting if my read of the landscape is anything, I'm betting that in August we will also be reading The Duke's Children, the final book in the Palliser series, along with the Odyssey. But that's a long way off. So for now, concentrate on Machiavelli. I just wanted to give you a heads up what's coming. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.